Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today we're looking at snakes. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, although I have told the story on my stream at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio, but my wife and I have a dozen snakes. We literally have 12 pet snakes. And I was looking through the cards in Shining Legends, and I thought this is a fairly snake-heavy set. So I thought, you know what? Let's have a look at the ultimate Pokemon trading card game snake deck. Let's see what deck we can make using snakes. Now, we've already talked about Seviper. Link to that in the description. We're going to go more into Seviper in a moment. But first of all, I want to start off talking about a Pokemon who hasn't had his own video so far. It's Arbok. Now, Arbok is a Stage 1 Psychic Pokemon. Good news about being a Psychic Pokemon, you're hitting for weakness against things like Espeon, Garbodor, etc. The bad news about being a Psychic Pokemon is that you're weak to things like Garbodor, Espeon, etc. The retreat cost of 3 is very high. Heavy Ball's a good thing, but it is quite annoying. 120 HP is alright, but don't worry, we've got options in the future. No resistance, unfortunately. Most cards don't. So, what does Arbok actually do? Well, the ability is Intimidating Pattern. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, it takes 30 less damage from attacks. So although it actually has 120 HP, it may as well have 150 HP because of the ability. This is really, really nice. Brings up the HP a little bit more. We've got more options. We'll look at that in a moment. The attack is fine. For a Psychic and a double colourless, 70 damage plus automatic poison. Now, it's a little bit weak, but the poison makes it a little bit better. And you can use double colourless energy here, and that's actually quite nice. And that's where we bring in our other Serpentine friend, Seviper. Now, I do apologise, they're not both coming out in Shining Legends. Arbok is coming out in Shining Legends, and Seviper is coming out in Burning Shadows. But given that Burning Shadows drops in August, and Seviper drops in Shining Legends in October, I'm going to forgive myself, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to forgive myself. What's good about Seviper? Your poison now does an extra 10 damage between turns. So this Seviper is doing 70, but with poison it's essentially 80. Fine. With one Seviper, you're going up to 90. 2, you go up to 100. 3, you go up to 110. And if you've got 4 Seviper on the bench, you're doing 120. Now 120... for free energy is an awful lot better. But don't forget that poison operates between turns. So you do 50 damage for poison after your turn. You then do 50 damage for poison after your opponent's, and then 50 after yours, and 50 after your opponent's, and so on and so forth. And that really is the crux of the deck here. You use Seviper to increase the poison damage, while Arbok is your main attacker and is a little bit tanky. So what other key cards do we have here? Well, firstly, double colourless energy is a given. You've got to have some of that double colourless energy, otherwise the attack is just way too expensive. You should also be considering cards like Max Elixir to accelerate extra energy, although that would have to be onto Ekans, not Arbok. Or you might consider Experience Share to retain that psychic energy when you get KO'd. Although do remember that Field Blower is a thing nowadays, and that could be mighty awkward for you. Now, most decks nowadays do play Choice Band. But the thing is, Choice Band really is only good when you're trying to do extra damage. But we don't need to do that much extra damage in this deck, because we've got poison. Now, assuming you've got 4 Seviper on the bench, you're doing 120. But by the time that poison operates after your opponent's turn, it comes back to you at 170 and then goes and poisons them again, and then they're at 220, which will KO most things. You can play Choice Band here, but Choice Band is not actually the best tool card here. Might I suggest Muscle Dumbbells? Now, Muscle Dumbbells is coming out in Burning Shadows, and it increases the HP of all of your Stage 1 Pokemon by 40. And Arbok is a stage 1 Pokemon, so now you don't have 120 HP. You don't even effectively have 150 because of the ability. You essentially have 190 because of the combination of the ability and muscle dumbbells. Now with 190, now don't get me wrong, against something like a Garbodor you're still being hit for weakness, but against pretty much anything else, it's quite hard to do 190 in one go. That means that your Arbok is going to last a couple of turns, enough time to build up a second Arbok on the bench, and might I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that Arbok is a single prize non-GX Pokemon. That gives you an advantage. Now, you could even use a bunch of Tapu Lele here. You're going to be playing Psychic Energy anyway, so you can play Tapu Cure with the Tapu Lele and completely cure 2 of your Arbok if you so wish. There's no other GX you desperately need to use here. This could be a fun little deck. Now, I call it the Ultimate Snake deck. I'm not saying it's the best deck ever. But I am saying that with an Arbok of essentially 190 HP, hitting 470 damage, doing 50 for poison between turns, that sounds pretty good to me. But you're not always going to have an Arbok ready to go. The biggest problem with this deck is that you need a Psychic and a double colourless on a stage 1 Arbok. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. We have a couple of other Pokemon here that I suggest might be kind of useful here. Firstly, we've got Toxapex, another stage 1 psychic Pokemon, but this one fits in very nicely indeed because of the ability Toxic Spikes. If your opponent retreats, the new active Pokemon is poisoned. That means you could get some cheeky poison going on here, and with your Seviper you could be doing a whole bunch of damage. And the great news is here that you don't even need to attack to do it, so maybe this could be getting some damage on the field while your Arbok is trying to get the energy going. But there is one other Pokemon that I think could be extremely useful in this deck, and that's Wobbuffet. And there are several reasons why I like Wobbuffet in this deck. Firstly, it turns off abilities of non-psychic Pokemon. So, okay, Tapu Lele's going to go through it, that's a bit annoying, but Greninja's going to be pretty much entirely shut down by this, and something like Decidueye is going to have a hard time here, and something like Volcanion's going to struggle a little bit without Steam Up. You get where I'm going with this. It's a little bit awkward. And yes, I know Volcanion can get a one-hit KO. Anyway, you can slow the game down for your opponent, but the awesome thing is, look at all of your abilities. Arbok, Psychic Pokemon, you keep it. Seviper, Psychic Pokemon, you keep it. Toxapex, Psychic Pokemon, you keep it. Tapu Lele, Psychic Pokemon, you keep it. You see where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen. You are doing very nicely indeed. And to be honest, against something like Garbodor, because you're using poison anyway here, you could potentially just roll with Tapu Lele and not use Arbok as an attacker at all. That would be an option against psychic decks. But going back to Wobbuffet for just a moment, Wobbuffet's also got a fairly nice attack. 10 damage plus 10 for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if they've got 50 damage, you do 60, etc. But don't forget that with a combination of Toxapex, Seviper, etc., your opponent should be taking a whole bunch of damage throughout the game. And then Wobbuffet comes in, quite frankly, and cleans up. That is where Wobbuffet comes in, ladies and gentlemen. It's got a nice ability to slow the game down while you build up one of your Arbok. But it's also a really nice secondary attacker. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is the ultimate snake deck. Now, of course, your opponent could always play something like a Comfey or a Pokemon Center Lady and all your poison would be for naught. But there's got to be a world in which Arbok and Seviper can combine for some snaky goodness. Then, of course, you can play a Finn, maybe even a 1-1 Toxapex line for some extra poison damage, and Wobbuffet's always good, and I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line, especially with Tapu Lele as an emergency attacker, maybe somewhere down the line, this could be a fun old deck. Certainly, as a man with a dozen snakes, it's a deck I intend making and testing on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/PTCG Radio, as soon as Shining Legends comes out in October. something to look forward to. Now you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Go nuts, be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wossy and Twitch at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/PTCG Radio. The most important thing as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross and you've been watching PTCG Radio.